I'm going to give you some options or an option as far as the final assessment. So I can't remember what we did this with. It might have been, I can't remember. We had the option of either taking the test or doing a project, and that's kind of what we're doing here. So this document should have been shared with you today. Can you give me a thumbs up for real or a digital thumbs up if you've seen this today? Okay, so I'm looking at Leah, Elise, and McKinley, 3 trustworthy sources. They've seen this. So looks like I posted it properly. This is option 1 for you. This is something you can choose to do instead of the test. I want to make it real clear that for our final assessment, you can either take the test or you can do this project. You don't need to do both. So I'll give you, I'll just talk through the points here real briefly. This is a project that I've done in the past, and it's usually done with a group, but since we don't have that luxury, you would go through these checkpoints and you would create kind of a news report that leads into a weather report. And being that this is science class and we've been studying weather, the majority of your presentation would be emphasizing the weather to show me what you've learned. In the past, people who are students, when they do this, they really like to get into these news reports and make goofy stuff. And I'll show you some examples. That can certainly be done, and it can be goofy and funny and entertaining that way, but the bulk of the presentation should be emphasizing the weather. So let's take a look at Carter's, and I can't remember who else was in Carter's group last year. They did the not fake news. And I guess the other thing to make known is that you would film yourself presenting this, and the final thing that you turn in is not just the Google Slides presentation, but it's a video of you delivering your news story and then delivering your weather report. So they created names for themselves, and they got into some breaking news. This is all done in Google Slides, but they're sharing this with the class, and like I said, you'd be sharing this in a video format. Their first story is that a zebra loses its stripes. So it's ridiculous news. There's the zebra without the stripes. And then another news story of a crazy man punching a rock, and there's the rock. And then they get into the weather forecast. So this is where the bulk of it comes in. Looks like we have a question, maybe. I try to film myself rubbing my mouth. Okay. Try again, McKinley. If anybody can see McKinley's comment here, if you have any suggestions for videos, you can feel free to respond to McKinley's question. I'm going to minimize this presentation. Well, what they didn't type out, which would have been great for the first slide, is that they were here somewhere in Texas, hence the star. The first requirement is, as after the news report, the first requirement is to give some geographically accurate temperature readings from across the country. So if I go back to their presentation, they have 15, and they have a really easy to read key that shows that red means warm, orange means in between, and blue means cool. Now, they're geographically accurate, and they're also accurate for the time of the year. So I don't know if I agree 100% with their blue dots here. For spring, 59 degrees in the Twin Cities and 57 for, what would this be? North Dakota. Maybe name what's in North Dakota? Fargo? Is that Fargo? I think those are accurate for the time of year. So these should be maybe orange. I would think that anything in the 80s, sure, that seems warm for this time of year, spring. But at a minimum, they've given 15 locations from around the country, and they seem pretty accurate for the time. Trying to see if we're Will, what's your question?
I don't have a question.
Why did you type question mark then?
I don't know. I didn't understand the first one.
The first one, what?
The first comment, right?
You mean McKinley's comment?
No, in the chat.
All right. I'm going to proceed. The second slide of your weather report should be a weather map that you've created for the entire country. And then you'll describe what's going on, keeping to a minimum of a warm front, a cold front, a high pressure, and a low pressure system. So I used to make it required that we just do one, but when we go into Google Slides, it's nice to actually, so there's their temperature map. You can make the map go into motion. So there's their high pressure, warm front, cold front, low pressure, another low pressure. Again, they've indicated on the map where they're located. They've never named it, so that's not helpful. But they've also included low pressure systems. They're following that note that we put into our, well, hopefully put somewhere from Friday, where we said precipitation tends to occur along and behind cold fronts, along and ahead of warm fronts, but always around low pressure systems. So they do a good job of the map in motion. And then on the last slide, so their last requirement is a 3-day outlook for their location. Again, it's somewhere in Texas, never named it. But if I go back to their star and the fact that looks like we had a warm front pass and high pressure, we could expect pretty nice weather, and that's what they're for their 3 days.
Oh.
So, last requirement, once again, is 3-day outlook for an area of the country that you choose. Just be clear what that city is. Needs to be accurate based on the weather map from the previous slide or slides. Information should include but not be limited to temperature, wind speed, cloud cover, chance of precip, and day of the week. So once again, this is an option for you to exercise instead of the test. The test is scheduled for Thursday. Kellen's asking, are we doing this with partners or by ourselves? If you can find a way to do this, where you create a presentation in video and put it together, you can work with one other person on this. Before I address Kellen's question, is the weather test on Edmodo? I'll send you the weather test, Carson. Good question. The weather test will be on Thursday. I'll send it directly to you. So there's going to be a few things working here that I need you to be aware of. The test will be Thursday. I'll send everybody a test, whether you take it or not. You need to turn something in by Friday. So these presentations would be due Friday. If you're working on it and you send your final presentation in for this project, it's due by Friday. If it comes to Thursday and it's looking like this isn't realistic, then you would take it. So I don't know if that's totally confusing or not, but seventh graders, if you do not have any questions on these requirements, we're getting some eighth graders to start trickling in for their portion. You are free to go. If you want to hang around and get any questions answered, do that. Again, seventh graders, if I sent you a direct message for your station model practice that was due last week, you got to get that to me ASAP.